Your mood impacts your dating and your relationship results. You obviously know that. Now, what do you do if you go on a date with a lady and maybe you're a little bit overworked, maybe a little bit stressed, maybe a little bit angry, maybe your mood isn't as amazing? Should you do something to put yourself in a better mood to control your state, or should you own the mood that you're in because it's just more authentic in that moment? Well, the answer is a little bit more complex. Let me start by saying that enhancing your mental and emotional state oftentimes is going to do great things for you. So for example, for me, I have not an infinite amount of data points, but a ridiculously large amount of data points to draw from when I make these videos. There's so many nuanced points, threads, ideas that I could go into, where if I were to consciously control all these thoughts, if I were to consciously structure it and memorize it, you wouldn't want to listen to it, and I would get completely stifled and stuck in my own head. So for me to be able to access these points in an effortless way, in a flow-like manner, I have to put myself in a state where I'm easily able to access these different data points. You know that when you're given a presentation at work, sometimes, regardless of the knowledge you have, you're more in flow, you're less in flow. Sometimes, irregardless of how much you know on a given subject matter, you experience more flow or less flow, and thereby the impactfulness of the presentation is impacted, if you get what I'm saying. So, putting yourself in a great state before you go on a date by controlling, we're going to talk about that in a minute, your language patterns, your patterns of focus, and your physiology is absolutely something that I recommend. Now, some people say, well, it's a fake pump up. It's fake motivation. No, it's absolutely not fake. Your brain is able to prime different and some more, some less resourceful emotional and mental states. You are able to make yourself just a little bit more, you're saying relaxed, could be relaxed, or depressed, anxious, certain, funny. These are all competencies that reside within you. Once you've experienced a certain mental and emotional state, it's in there. You're never going to get it out, which means you will be able to access it over and over again if you choose to do so. That is not my opinion. That comes from one of Germany's best psychologists by the name of Gunther Schmidt. So now a lot of people use this, or in other words, they let this concept use them in a negative way. For example, they prime disempowering mental and emotional states more often than not, and they're not aware of it. You have to understand that the way you're feeling right now is not an accident. It doesn't just happen by itself. Most of us think that the emotions we experience on a daily basis is just something that descends upon us, that is 100% or at least 90% determined by external circumstances. And do external circumstances have a massive impact on how we feel? Of course, 100%. Whether or not you have amazing high-quality male friends, whether or not you have a great job that fulfills you, whether or not you have an amazing girlfriend, life partner, or wife by your side that you can connect to in all different kinds of ways, if you get what I'm saying, on a daily basis, of course, that has a massive impact. But Gunther Schmidt talks about hypnosystemic therapy. In life, there are systemic components, external feedback loops that massively impact how we feel. Of course, we don't exist in a vacuum, but why is it that there are some people like Viktor Frankl who, in the face of ultimate despair, disaster, and in the face of the worst evil that humankind has ever seen, is able to find a degree of inner peace and even love and compassion? How is that possible? Why are there so many people who, regardless of the external circumstances, were able to find a sense of strength, peace, compassion, and love? If it was true that the external circumstances, the fact that you got a rejection, that she dumped you, that she rejected you, if that was really at the cause of how you're feeling, well, then nobody would ever be able to create a resourceful mental and emotional state in the face of any challenge, regardless of the severity of it. So, the ultimate determining factor of how you feel, your mental and emotional performance, resides within three components. Tony Robbins talks about that. One, what you focus on. We human beings focus on things and then we give them a meaning. The meaning we give things after we focus on them creates our mental and emotional reality. If you get a rejection and you ascribe the following meaning to it: I must not be worthy of being loved. I'll never figure this out. This whole dating thing doesn't work. There are no loyal or good women out there. They're all a bunch of anyway. If you ascribe such a negative, disempowering meaning to the situation, guess what type of emotional state you're going to experience as a result of it. We human beings are meaning-making machines, but you have to understand that in life, yes, there are certain things that we can say are objectively true. Gravity. If I take this little stick and I drop it, there's gravity. But gravity is relative, right? Not saying that I have a scientific understanding of it, but depending on the mass of the planet you're on, gravity varies in and of itself. That's not to say that gravity isn't true. So obviously, there is the truth. But on the other hand, we work way more with interpretations in life and giving things meaning than with actual truth. Whether a rejection is something positive, something that's happening to you, or something that's happening for you, is something that you decide. You can decide at the core that life is happening for you and not to you. And thereby, every challenge you're presented with is an opportunity to grow and learn, or to win. In life, you either win or you learn. Now you might say, well, that's evidently not true. Sometimes I suffer, sometimes I feel so bad. You have to understand that there's a difference between pain and suffering. Pain happens. Suffering is optional. It's truly like that. Now you might say, no, but I've suffered so much in my life. You're trying to tell me this was optional? This is not to say, that there aren't things that have happened to you that you had no responsibility in, that were just unfair and just, and there's no reason for that. Of course. But at the same time, look at the suffering you experience on a weekly or monthly, yearly basis. You might say, I don't actually suffer that much. Pain, call it pain. The suffering that you experience, where does that come from? Well, pain happens when the way life is doesn't match the way we want it to be. I want to go on a date with her and she rejected me. Okay, cool. Or I went on a great date with her because you have blind spots in your communications and you haven't resolved that yet. You thought you had a great first date and then she doesn't show up for the second or third date. She tells you she didn't really feel the spark of the connection, or she only sees you as a friend. Okay, now that's pain. Pain can come in the form of anger, sadness, frustration, anxiety. These are states of pain. That's fine. That's bound to happen in life. You cannot change that. Physical pain, bound to happen. Suffering comes when the way life is doesn't match the way life's supposed to be, and we feel unable to bridge the gap. We feel unable to make a change. That's when you feel depressed. Okay, let that sink in one more time. When the way life is doesn't match the way life's supposed to be, that's pain. When you feel unable to bridge the gap, I cannot change this. I'm single, I want a woman, but I don't see myself as a man who's capable of breaking through this challenge, then you feel depressed or frustrated. You feel incompetent, and then you start compensating with alcohol, and you start distracting yourself from some of life's most important things, which is a relationship. So, understand that first of all, what we focus on and the meaning we give it determines largely how we feel. And Tony also says that what's right is always available and so is what's wrong. There's a million things you could focus on right now that are wrong in this life. And you would have every right to focus on these things. This man wronged you. This woman wronged you. This life circumstance isn't optimal. There's a million things that you would have every right to complain about and feel bad about it. You absolutely have the right to do so. But why? What is it going to do for you? There's also 10 million things, 10 million acts of kindness that are happening in the world right now, where human beings treat each other in an incredibly loving way. Friends looking out for each other, family members taking care of each other, charitable acts, selfless acts. Human beings are partially, largely selfless. We are selfish, but we are also selfless. If I were to ask you right now, what is one beautiful act of kindness that you've experienced in your life by another person, older, younger, sibling, relative, family member, stranger, woman, man, that you didn't even deserve? You deserve it as a person, but that you did nothing for. They just gave it to you. They just did it for you. When was a moment where somebody just treated you extraordinarily well, extended a hand when you really needed it, just took care of you, gave you advice that really, really helped you? even just by thinking about it, by putting your focus on it. Maybe there's a little shift in how you feel. We can change the way we feel very fast, within seconds and minutes. Most of us do not make the decision to control the most important force of our life, the invisible force of life, which is emotion. You have to make a decision to control these emotions on a daily basis. And you're already doing so very successfully in certain areas. In your business, perhaps in your health, maybe in your career. You've already largely done this. Now you need to transfer the habit into the area of dating and relationships. You probably have quite a harsh inner self-dialogue. You're quite harsh on yourself. And that disempowers you, and that's the second component. So it's not just what we focus on and the meaning we give it that either empowers us or disempowers us, but it's also how we speak to ourselves externally and internally. You have an internal dialogue. It's not just homeless people talking to themselves. You're talking to yourself. They're just externally verbalizing it. Yeah, obviously they have other issues. Not trying to compare you to a homeless person at all, and not trying to say that we shouldn't take care of these people. Of course we should. We should do whatever we can to take care of these people. At some point people need to help themselves, but obviously there are some people who are beyond the point where they can help themselves, so at least temporarily we need to take care of them. Very, very complex discussion, but nonetheless you get the idea. You talk to yourself just as much. It's just internally. If the world were to verbalize out loud your internal dialogue, they'd be shocked. You would never dare to speak to another human being the way you speak to yourself. Considering how harsh you are with yourself when things don't go the way you want them to, the way you beat yourself up, you're probably a super kind and caring person to a lot of people, just not to yourself. The way you speak to yourself, which refers to the content of your words, what you say, and how you say it, has a massive and immediate impact on how you feel. One of the things that I say to my clients, after you get a rejection, or even just after you do an approach, immediately you gotta go, who would have, what do I say? Who would have the courage to do what I just did? Who would have the balls to do what I just did? He's meditating, it's fine. Continuing his tens of thousands of hours of meditation. Getting your mindset right, exactly. Getting the first-hand experience. So you immediately gotta reward yourself. After you do an approach, be that in person or online, who would have the balls to do that? Oh, online's a little bit easier, guys do that, of course. But if you approach a woman in Starbucks and you say, excuse me 2 seconds, I know this probably isn't the done thing, but have you tried this pumpkin spice latte? Or, I'm mixing two things. I'm mixing direct and indirect. You say, I know this probably isn't the done thing, but you're really cute, so I had to come meet you. Okay, cool. Or you say, have you tried this pumpkin spice latte? She says, yes or no. What's an excuse to just come talk to you anyway? And then you carry the conversation forward. Regardless of how it goes, you immediately have to tell yourself, who would have the courage to do what I just did? Most men are beta cucks. They would never have the balls to do that. That's why they stumble into relationships by accident. Mediocre relationships. Average relationships. They twice a week. It's not mega exciting, but it's just what it is. And they've just settled for it because they're not doing what you did. See, that's just a dialogue. Now, is this ultimately more true than something else? We were talking about truth earlier. Well, you choose the meaning you ascribe to things, whether it's true or not. Is it useful? That's the more important question. I believe politicians have a very difficult job. Now, you can say about politicians whatever you want. Obviously, a bunch of them are corrupt crooks, but I believe there's a lot of politicians also who go in there, at least in the beginning, with the intention to do good. And creating macro policies for human beings is very, very difficult. And I do believe that we should believe in things based on good evidence, not on bad evidence. But as an individual, let me tell you something, it's perfectly fine to believe on things based on bad evidence, just purely based on whether or not it's useful. Why are there so many people who are religious? Is that really good evidence? I'm not trying to talk about religion here. I'm not trying to criticize your faith. I don't want to talk bad about it or good about it, right? This is completely up to you. I respect that, right? I'm Christian on paper as well, right? I'm a little bit more spiritual and religious. But is there really good evidence? Or is it a belief? Well, it's a discussion for a different day. But what we can, regardless of that discussion, is it useful for the individual to believe in a higher power? And now you might say, not for me. And some of you might say, absolutely, perfectly fine, I respect that. But what we have to accept is that for some, a lot, like millions of people, it's very useful. Look at Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Part of that is the idea of surrendering. I give myself to a higher power. Even if it's not for you, it's right for a lot of people. right? Not here to prescribe. No, I just want to have an intellectual conversation. I want to make the argument that for some people, it's absolute millions, I don't know, billions people, it's super useful to believe in it, whether there's good evidence or not. The belief that I was destined to do great things. Human beings are selfless. Do we have good data for that or bad data? Well, there's plenty of data that would suggest otherwise. I also believe there's plenty of data that suggests that we are. I don't need data to adopt a belief that empowers me and does no harm to other people. Choose your beliefs very, very wisely. So if it's useful for me, if it's good for me and it harms other people in no way, seems like it makes a lot of sense. So the way you speak to yourself, volume, speed, we've talked about it in other videos, immediately massively impacts how you feel about yourself. The third component is physiology, how to use your body. Exercise, bare minimum. As a man, you should be working out at least every second day. It's not just about how you look. I was talking to one of the clients about that earlier. It's not just about how you look. Yes, it's going to make you feel amazing, but it's also a neurochemical change that happens. Testosterone is boosted immediately after weight training for a period of up to 48 hours. If you don't work out with weights, I don't want to work out most of the time. I don't want to. 60, 70% of the time, 80% of the time. But I do it anyway because I know how amazing I'm going to feel afterwards. Yes, Andrew Huberman says that the more you actually enjoy exercise, the more dopamine you get from it, which is very true. And that's a work smart, not hard, or rather work smart and hard component, where I always love training martial arts way more than weights. And that's why I had these incredible highs after a karate session, whether I was teaching or being taught by my instructors back in the day, because I love the exercise. So don't just do exercise that you hate. Find a way to do exercise that you really love. If you hate running, if you hate going to the gym, do something else. Do calisthenics. Find exercise that you enjoy the most, but you still got to do some amount of weight training, because if you don't do it, you will just miss out on testosterone. That's been proven. So that's the base foundation that we all need to take care of our physiology and our mental and emotional state. But it also depends on how you speak. How much certainty do you put into your language? How much do you use your hand gestures? And I'm not suggesting that you have to communicate like me at all. Completely unnecessary. Really not necessary. This is about you authentically expressing yourself, which we're going to talk about in a minute, because sometimes it's perfectly fine to be in a bad state or in a low energy state and still be super effective on dates. But using the way your hand gestures, the way you communicate non-verbally while you're talking to somebody, volume, pitch, inflection, all of that has an impact on how you feel. The way you walk. Gunther Schmidt says, how you're going, that's how it's going. Hey, how's it going, man? Well, how you're going, that's how it's going. Whenever you're walking somewhere, you're hypnotizing yourself. And hypnosis doesn't just mean trance, but you're changing your mental and emotional state. The way you walk is never neutral. It's never neutral. You're either priming an empowering state or a disempowering state. It's a 2 millimeter difference, as Tony Robbins says, whether my shoulders are a little bit slouched over or a little bit more back. The way you use your body, the way you walk, the swagger you have in your walk, and I'm not saying that you need to do it to a ridiculous extent where people start making fun of you because it's too far outside of the norm, where you get ostracized from society. But can you walk like this instead of like this? And if you listen to this on a podcast, I just basically pulled my shoulders back by a couple of centimeters. That's a big difference. Can you keep your head up high? Right? Jordan Peterson says it. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. Why? Well, it has an immediate neurological impact on how you feel. Never tilt your head down. When I see people on their phones with their head down, you are depressing yourself. You're depressing yourself by putting your head down. Never put your head down. Don't do it. It depresses you. Shoulders back, straight. It's so important. This goes way, way, way deeper. But what I want you to understand is that it's super powerful and useful to change your state, because if you change your state, if you change your emotions, you're better able to freely associate. And remember, on a date, she's not just going to react to the words. Yes, the words really matter. Why do I have a coaching program? Because that's so important and it really matters. But at the same time, she will also heavily react to the emotions you bring. Mirror neurons, she'll unconsciously pick up on what you feel. So if you want her to feel desirable emotions, you have to first create those emotions within yourself. If you want to influence other people, you have to influence yourself first. And that starts with your mental and your emotional state. So that's the argument for why it's useful to control your mental and emotional state on a daily basis. And by the way, one more time, whenever there's a trend in society, there's a counter trend. And for years we've had a trend now with amazing legends like Tony Robbins pushing the idea of a morning routine. Now we have a counter trend, people saying, yeah, just work. Just work. You don't need a morning routine. Fine, but let me tell you this. Milton Erickson, founder of hypnotherapy, one of the greatest icons in the field, he, I believe, had polio. And he was in such severe pain that every morning he had to do hypnotherapy rituals. He had to use a variety of different techniques to numb the pain without drugs. But he had to use hypnosis. And hypnosis doesn't equal trance. Milton Erickson, I think Gunther Schmidt says that Milton Erickson said that in the thousands of the interventions or sessions that Milton Erickson did with people, he actually only used trance in 25% of them. So hypnosystemic therapy, hypnosis is not the same thing at all as trance immediately. But he had to use things like, for example, trance or other hypnotherapy tools to reduce pain to a level where he was able to function, to reduce pain to a point where he was able to even just think clearly because he had such pain from polio for years. And Gunther Schmidt, one of Germany's best psychologists, I'm not a psychologist or a psychotherapist, but I was able to learn from a lot of great people, and he was one of them. He told the story of how when he was young and ambitious, he attended a seminar, or he was with Milton Erickson in the States, I don't know, wherever it was, and one day Milton Erickson comes a couple of hours late to the seminar, and then Gunther Schmidt goes, being a good German, right? He's like, we're supposed to start at 9, now it's 11. And he goes, yeah, my son, in front of the entire group, you know, I have polio and I have such severe pain that when I wake up I can't even think clearly. I'm getting the details wrong, but it's basically the gist of it. I have such severe pain that I wouldn't be able to present and help you guys out. So I hope you'll forgive me that I need to put myself in a state for a couple of hours first to be able to come and present that knowledge to you. And obviously he felt very ashamed of himself and he got the lesson immediately. So if Milton Erickson can spend 2 to 3 or sometimes even more hours every single day to put himself in a state where his cognitive performance is optimized so he can deliver the best results to his clients as well as fellow teachers possible, why shouldn't you? What makes you think that you're so special that you don't need that? If they need it to improve, and again, you don't need it to survive, but are we talking about peak performance? Right, remember, if you want extraordinary results in your life, you got to be able to operate at a level of performance most people don't operate at. And a morning routine or routines throughout the day are absolutely and utterly necessary. Gratitude, ice baths, sauna. And you find yours. There's a million different tools available. I think Jack Kornfield says there's over 100 different types of just Vipassana, I'm not sure if it's Vipassana meditations or different types of meditations available. Even just within the habit of meditation, there's so many subtypes of meditation. There's so many tools that you can use that will help you optimize your performance, but you gotta commit to using some on a daily basis. One of the most important things to boost your state is to listen to something positive every single day. 30 minutes every single day. You gotta listen to personal development, dating, relationship, business content, something that's motivating, inspiring, and educating on a daily basis, because you're not just learning at an intellectual level, you're also learning at an emotional level. You have to feed your mind with positivity, because you have to understand that your mind is always going to look for what's wrong if left alone. Your mind, left to its own devices, will always look for what's wrong, because what's wrong can be way worse than how good what's good can be. Your brain only ever differentiates between a threat and an opportunity. And a threat can be ultimately bad, which is death. An opportunity can be only so good because how many resources can you really acquire? So your brain's job is to help you survive. It's not to make you happy. That is your job. So do take care of your physiology. Create new patterns of focus. And if you felt yourself having a disempowering inner self dialogue, understand it's just a habit. You are not negative. People have put it into you, and you gotta rewire yourself with positivity every single day. That's the argument for it. Now, sometimes when you're on the date, you're just a little bit calmer, a little bit more pissed off, and sometimes when you go out and socialize, when you're on a date, it can just be fine to own the state that you're in. This is not about fake positive thinking. Hey, I'm so happy with my ex-wife. On my wedding day, I was smiling so much even when I didn't feel like smiling that the next day I had a panic attack and I had to call the ambulance because I thought they were choking. They told me your airways are perfectly clean. You have extraordinarily high levels of anxiety. Why? Well, partially because I have unmet needs and I wasn't paying attention to what was going on inside of me. And I was making a commitment for life to a woman who wasn't right for me. Well, that had a lot to do with it. But it was also, which ties into a much bigger theme, part of the reason was that I was smiling when I didn't feel like it. I was like, smiling, even just something simple as not smiling when I don't feel like smiling is huge. Now, I smile a lot. I think smiling and being positive is amazing, right? I think we've belabored that point at length now. But sometimes just owning the state you're in and being authentic is way more important. People appreciate your authenticity and realness way more than a fake smile, because there's a bunch of people who will fake smile and they'll stab you in the back the next day. So, allow yourself to own whatever state you're in. Sometimes it'll be a bit more excited and enthusiastic. Sometimes it'll be a little bit more stoic and relaxed. All of that is fine. Allow yourself to own whatever state you're in, while at a macro level, every single day, pumping your state to the maximum, because it will improve your ability to access the knowledge that's already inside you. It'll improve your performance on the job. It'll improve your performance in your work. It'll improve your performance on your dates. It'll even improve your intimate performance, if you get what I'm saying. It really will. So make a decision to raise your standards every single day, and it has to become a standard. It's not just something you do every once in a while. It has to become a consistent thing that you do every single day, or at least 5-6 days a week. If you don't make it a habit in a way where you enjoy it, you will not be able to get the results you want. And remember, an amazing relationship to the right woman is, if you want me to help you with that personally, make the decision to step up. This goes a million miles deeper in my coaching program. Click the link underneath this video. Regardless, take action. Wish you all the best. Take care.